Welcome back to the room. First off, I wanted to reflect on the fact that we're at the Café Moskau on Karl Marx Alley, talking about how we invest capital to build the enterprises of the future. And what this reminds me of is the one constancy in the world is that everything changes all the time. And that's very true in growth as well. So what I'm going to talk about today is how you build a growth framework for your company. Obviously, depending upon your stage, how you apply it might be different, but it's very important that we think about things in a structured and almost like formulaic manner rather than just throwing stuff at the walls and praying to God it works. So let's talk about building a growth framework. As mentioned, I work for GetYourGuide. You had a meet earlier today, and as Amit said, we are on a mission to give the world access to incredible experiences. That is our mission. Who am I? I joined 6 years ago in product management. I'm now the CMO after 6 years of product building the growth team and now doing things like brand marketing, which I never expected to do. But I really joined the journey in 2013, and it has been a journey. Our growth at GetYourGuide has been pretty tremendous in the last 6 years. You can try to count the pixels and figure out, did GetYourGuide grow 30x, 60x, 100x, but sorry, they're not quite to scale, so don't try. Or you can, but it won't give you the right answer. But more importantly, for all the growth that we've seen, our industry is $180 billion, which means that the growth we have ahead is actually much bigger than the growth we already had behind. And for most of the people in this room, your marketplaces that you're developing, that's probably also the case. You have more growth ahead than you have behind. And the question is, how do you capture it? And how do you keep capturing it? And then how do you keep innovating and iterating to capture it? And before we go into growth as a tactical conversation, I first want to talk about something extremely important, which is product market fit. Because if you don't have product market fit, nothing else matters at the end of the day. Now, GetYourGuide, like probably a lot of the marketplaces that you're working on, started off as an offline problem that we decided to bring online. In fact, our co-founders, they were in China, and one of them arrived early. He went to Beijing, and everything was depressing. The food was bad. Things were expensive. No one was helpful. The next day, his co-founder arrived, who is actually from Beijing, and all the food was great. Everyone was friendly. Everything was less expensive. And what they realized, that light bulb moment, was that if you have someone who knows the landscape, they can actually show you a better side of the city. And so what they did, well, they decided to start a company. And with that company, they said, let's build a P2P network. And let's get all these people who live in Zurich, because they were in Zurich at the time, to show people who are coming in to travel Zurich. The problem is that there's not a lot of people who want to give up their free time to show random strangers around a city. It's become more common these days, but back then it was completely unheard of. And they actually found their product market fit when a bunch of suppliers and professional guides said, hey, can we join your platform? We really, really want to have more distribution. We want to have more customers and travelers coming to us. And all of a sudden, GetYourGuide took off. But this is very important, which is product market fit is about finding a problem and finding a way to solve it very seamlessly for the consumer or the provider or some other part of your marketplace. And the digital side does that for GetYourGuide as it does in a lot of our marketplaces. Fundamentally, what we believe, and I think all of you agree, is that technology cures the chaos of an offline world. So if you bring something from the offline world where it's opaque, where it's a little bit muddy, and you bring it online, you get reviews, you get clarity about what's good quality. You can add search, you can add curation, you can start to personalize for the actual consumer who's coming to you. And this is what we found at GetYourGuide. This was our product market fit. We can't grow until we had these features in place. And then what you need to keep doing, so a lot of your marketplaces are in their infancy or they're just starting to break out. What you need to think about is how do you innovate inside of your core product market fit? Again, not going way outside to the next new thing, but inside of your product market fit, how do you innovate to keep customers engaged? And innovation for us, for example, means creating more incredible experiences. We have our Originals product, which uses our leverage of millions and millions of customer reviews, as well as all of our local guides that we now have on our platform to create new experiences. Also, we're able to personalize things better. So now that we know more about customers, more about activities, we can actually say, hey, here are better activities for you. And finally, of course, on the guide and operator side, they have insights they never had before. We keep building products to make our product more engaging. Product market fit is the first thing you have to have. If you don't have it, you can't do anything else in this growth talk. Make sure that you have product market fit. The best way to figure that out, talk to your customers. Honestly, talk to your customers. Look at your data. Are people using it? Are they coming back? Then you know you have product market fit. Okay, that's done. Let's say that we do have product market fit. How do we actually drive growth? I want to tell you a quick story before we begin. There was a conference where some guy was talking about growth, much like this conference today. And he mentioned that Instagram stories worked really well. And so the next day, the marketer went back to his team and said, hey guys, this growth guy, he worked at this company, they had great growth. They said Instagram stories really worked. We're gonna really play with them now. And another marketer went back to her team and she said, hey, I heard that Instagram stories really work. We're gonna go use them now. And then another guy went back to his team and said, look, Instagram stories, I hear it's where it's at the moment. About a month later, the Instagram team was sitting down and they said, wow, revenue in Instagram stories has just gone through the roof, but then it collapsed. What happened? And the head of sales didn't know, the head of product didn't know. And finally someone said, oh, there was a growth conference. That's all the companies trying Instagram stories because someone said Instagram stories worked, but then it didn't work, so they turned it off. Remember, don't copy what I say. So if I mention a growth tactic, it might have worked for GetYourGuide, but your growth tactics matter for your consumer and for your marketplace. That's my, my warning and caveat before we go into the rest of this. Now, this is very important because a lot of you are going to hear from your investors, hey, another company in my portfolio does this and it works. You're going to hear from your CEO if you're on the marketing team, hey, another company that I met does this and it really works. Some of you are going to get from your CMOs, hey, I know that this channel is just the best channel to play in. We get enamored by things that people say work, that people say are good. I love this picture of the Vatican because when you're in the Vatican at 11 o'clock on a Saturday in high season, it is not an incredible experience in any way, shape, or form. If you're there before hours in low season, it's amazing. You are alone in the Sistine Chapel. But we go there because people say you should go to the Vatican, it's an incredible experience. But again, there's always a nuance. There's always something that you need to take into account. And so I think to rebel against the investors and the CEOs and the CMOs who think they know everything, we created this term called growth hacking. And this is both good and bad. It was good because what hacking tends to demonstrate is lots of technical stuff and lots of data. And marketing and growth today is 100% technical and data. If you're not measuring, you can't operate on it. If you don't do it technically, you can't scale it. So growth hacking is great in that sense. Growth hacking is bad because just like the CMOs and the CEOs and the investors who think they have all the answers, what we started to do is we started to listen to all the people talk about all the growth hacks that worked. And this is what we got. We ended up following people off of a cliff because it didn't work for us. It might have worked for Uber, it might have worked for Lyft, it might have worked for Airbnb, it might have worked for GetYourGuide, but it might not work for you. Keep in mind that the most expensive growth hacks, the most expensive marketing channels are the ones that everyone's doing something in at the same time. So for example, referrals were all the rage about 6-7 years ago. Everyone was doing referrals. If you wanted to grow your company, you had to do a referral program. What happened was the value of a referral to a consumer dropped. So you got less engagement. Then the fraudsters came in. Hey, how do we game the system? And all of a sudden what you had were really expensive referral programs, and they no longer worked to grow your business because the economics didn't make sense. They did in some companies, but in most they didn't. So again, the most expensive time to hop on a growth bandwagon is when everyone is using it. You need to chart your own path, leveraging your customers. So besides product market fit, the second piece of advice I will give you is stop following other companies. Follow your customer. And then finally, operationalize this. To do growth consistently and repeatably, so GetYourGuide didn't have a year where it grew 300% and then a year where it didn't grow. It's been pretty consistent growth over the 6 years I've been there. It's because we've thought about how do you institute both structure around targets, so we use OKRs, structure around how we define those KPIs and how we collect data, structure around researching our customer, and structure around the people, process, and tools that we use to actually scale our growth model. So let's break this down a little bit. You need to know your growth model first. If you don't know your growth model, take a step back, figure it out. And I'll simplify marketplaces to two-sided. There's consumers and there's providers. Other marketplaces have other sides. That's fine. Again, you're looking for what are the things that drive what we call network effects. Most of your value in a marketplace when you're doing growth will come from network effects, where by pushing on one side of the marketplace, you cause growth in the other. And there are dynamics to these network effects that are important to keep in mind. They can be global or they can be local. Global is like a travel company. When you add inventory, for example, in Thailand, it's often as valuable as adding inventory in Berlin. Locals like Uber or Lyft. When you add more drivers in a city, that's valuable, but if you add more drivers in New York, that person in San Francisco, doesn't help them as much. They can be asymptotic, and I'll give an example of that later, or they can be linear, which means in general, as you add supply or add consumers, they climb together. So you should really understand your network effects, the model of your marketplace, and that becomes the basis for what you do next. So at GetYourGuide, our growth model looks something like this. We have more customers on our platform. They drive more revenue. Then that gets us more providers, because what do the providers want? They want revenue. They want more revenue per provider, basically. What does that do? That actually causes them to load up better and more global inventory. And then what does that do? That actually causes our consumers to convert more. Great, which adds more consumers to the top. And our network effect is global. So like I said, you can add some inventory in Thailand, almost as good as adding to Berlin. And it's also linear, which means roughly as we add supply and customers together, they climb together. And as you have more customers, you need some more supply. Now, I'm going to show you another example, and I won't claim to be an expert on this one because I don't work there, but it's Airbnb. And I want to point out that their network effects are similar to ours. They're a global network, and they grow linearly. And Airbnb might have a network that looks more like this, though. Because they're trying to actually create a new supply base, their network effect happens on the host side, which means more hosts yields better global selection, which actually drives higher conversion, which means you get more customers, which means there's higher income for the hosts, and then you get more hosts on your platform. And Airbnb, in fact, has spent a lot of time figuring out how to get more hosts onto their platform as they've scaled. Now, again, another company I'm not an expert in because I don't work there, but again, I can surmise based upon their model, they have a very different picture of their network. The model looks a lot like Airbnb. It starts on the driver's side, just like Airbnb starts on the host. But Uber is a local network effect, and they're asymptotic, which means that at some point, more supply has a very quick diminishing return. For example, wait time for Uber is hugely important on the rider side. But going from a 4-minute wait to a 1-minute wait is a massive change in rider engagement. Going from a 1-minute wait to a 10-second wait means nothing. And so you need to stop investing at a certain point. And again, Uber is more drivers, means a lower wait time, means you get more riders, which means you have higher usage, which means you get more income for your drivers, which drives more drivers. From there, once you have that picture in your mind, you want to establish KPIs. And these KPIs are important because all of your growth work that you're going to do is based upon these KPIs, and you set targets around them. So GetYourGuide, we use conversion rate. We use immediate repeat. And immediate repeat for us is like when you go to Rome, you can actually do 3 or 4 things. Unlike a hotel, you probably book one hotel, but for us, you can do 3 or 4 things. So it's important for us to capture the conversion as well as that immediate repeat. And then we look at operator revenue. What's our revenue per operator on our platform? Now, Airbnb, given the model I showed you, might have metrics like conversion rate. They might have metrics like host income. And because they spent so much money trying to get hosts on board, they probably look at host churn. And now for Uber, Uber theoretically could look at a metric like conversion rate, but they have a great proxy, which is average wait time. And then they might have a metric like driver income, and they might have a metric like driver churn. Again, you want to have these KPIs established because you want to set targets around them. Those targets allow you to really focus the efforts of your teams working on growth. And if you don't have these metrics really set, you're, again, going to try to just say, hey, get more customers. But is that actually what you want to do? Could it be that conversion rate within your funnel is the most important thing? Could it be that traffic to your site is the most important thing? Could it be that revenue for the providers on your app is the most important thing? You really need to understand your KPIs in order to build the next step of this, which is the actual hacks, quote unquote, that drive your growth. These ultimately come from understanding your customer. I'll talk about GetYourGuide's first hack in a minute, which is ticket buying. Everyone probably has heard about Airbnb's Craigslist hack. And what they did was they took all of the hosts who signed up early and they cross-listed them onto Craigslist. So the host got revenue from the Airbnb platform. And it actually created a lot of loyalty in their host network to Airbnb. Phenomenal. Uber actually set up driver boot camps. They realized that in places like New York or San Francisco, a lot of people don't have driver's licenses. So they actually had to take them to the DMV and get them driver's licenses and make sure they could actually sign up for Uber. So I'll talk about GetYourGuides in more detail because, again, that's where I work, that's what I understand. The idea for ticket buying for us came from very clear customer and operator insights. First off, travelers do not want to wait in line when they're on holiday. If anyone in this room wants to wait in line when they're on holiday, wow, I'd be shocked. The other thing that we realized is that no one had these tickets. No one had tickets to skip the line to an attraction. And this is what consumers wanted the most. But finally, the reason no one had them is because these operators, the iconic attractions like Eiffel Tower, the iconic attractions like Burj Khalifa, they don't need a platform to distribute. They have 4-hour lines outside. I mean, to them, that's fine. And so what we did is we said, look, okay, the operators don't want to manage our platform. What if we just bought tickets from the operator and then sold them on our platform? And what that yielded was this nice vicious circle where all of a sudden we had tickets. And then people could actually book on our platform. And then more people booked on our platform, which allowed us to get more tickets. And then more people booked on our platform. Again, the network effect started to kick off. Essentially what we did is we looked at a point in our network where there was a failure. And we said, how do we solve this failure based upon what we know about the customer? And again, it's not super crazily complex. It's a pretty simple solution. So, I mean, this fits very well with Amit's presentation earlier, who spoke about how you have wins in product. There's a lot of understand your customer, build up those insights, both qualitative and quantitative, and also keep it simple. We didn't have to go and negotiate some 10-year contract with the Eiffel Tower. It was literally just, hey, let's buy some tickets and see what happens. What were the results? Because I'm a results-driven guy, I like to talk about this. It actually drove about 10x growth in the core of attractions that we were working with. It was massive. And it actually propelled us for the next couple years on our growth trajectory. So again, sometimes the simple things, the basic things drive a lot of growth for you, and you just have to try them and see what happens. The interesting thing is, if we had bought the tickets and it didn't work, we weren't out that much money. We didn't buy, €1 million worth of tickets to start. We bought very, very few. We just wanted to see what would happen. And that's the key thing is keep it simple, start small, because if you find something that works, you can scale it. The other thing about your customers is sometimes they lead you to really boring places, like Google search. Most of your investors, most of your advisors, a lot of people in this room won't talk about the power of Google search engine, but it is incredible. It's much more fun to talk about beautiful imagery on Instagram. It's great to talk about videos on YouTube. It's great to talk about your virality. But at the end of the day, our customers at GetYourGuide are on Google. We did a bunch of user research, and every time we talked to them, every time, they would start off with, well, I go to Google, and basically when you hear that, don't try to fight it. Just lean into it. And so then we started to dig in, okay, well, do you go to Google just to ask things to do? And they said, yeah, but actually, sometimes once I know what I want to do, then I ask Google for tickets to the TV tower. Okay, so you're everywhere on Google, great. What do we do as a result of that? Our customers were saying, look, we are in Google right now asking questions, and we need help solving them. So we had about 100,000 keywords that we were operating in at the time. And we built a machine that basically generated 100 million keywords. We said, okay, let's just start putting ads out there. And this was actually massive for us. It drove our growth after the ticket buying kind of started to taper off a bit. This drove the next layer of our growth. And it's not sexy, it's not cool, it's not different. It is just going to Google and being there for your consumer. I cannot emphasize how important it is to be there for your consumer. To really understand that, then, you need to leverage a lot of techniques around customer research. The best, honestly, is to talk to your customers. Literally talk to them. If they are consumers, email them, have them call you up, go to them, walk out on the street if they are people who are just wandering around that you can talk to who are potential customers, but talk to them. Good is things like use your data, collect surveys. You can use remote user testing where you're not directly with the person. And it's okay to look at competitors or competitor data. But again, you really want to understand your customer. You want to get inside their mind. You want to understand, and sometimes in marketing we call these things like ethnographic research, but you want to know what sites do they visit? What apps do they use? What are their basic needs and problems? And you don't need to get fancy with it. It's not like, hey, they need X, so therefore I'm going to create some cool solution. It's just they need to book a tour, full stop. What frustrates them about you or your industry? So for example, as we talked to our customers as we were growing, a lot of it was, look, I don't know which tour is better. Like, can you help me with that? Can you tell me which tour is better? And that's actually led to a lot of the new things that we're testing in our product today. And then ultimately, what do they like? What are they into? Where do they go for fun? You kind of want to know what kind of partner do you need to be for them. But ultimately, you want to really get a full picture of your customer because it helps you understand where you as a company can operate, talk to them, and reach them. Again, this is all about how you build this reinforcing network effect. This is your strategy, essentially, for growth at the end of the day. And if you don't have it, what comes next won't matter, which is actually setting your team up for success. Now, some of you are in very, very small marketplaces. You're just trying to get the initial growth. Some of you are in larger marketplaces that are really starting to hit it. And you need to actually start to set up a team, a process, and a tool set that allows you to continue this growth going forward. And I love the framework of people, process, and platform. But when I talk about it, I always start with process, because understanding the process is important to understanding then the people and the tools that you need. So one, in your process, in growth, it is incredibly important to experiment. You want to test small, learn fast, kill things that don't work, scale things that are really successful. You need your data front and center all the time. And then you need to make sure that you're setting up sprints and you're prioritizing, just like you might in a product backlog. You need this process foundation set up because you want it to be an engine. You don't want to jump in every once in a while and try something and then jump out. You want to constantly be testing, constantly be iterating, and then scaling what works. Now, if you're experimenting, if you're playing around with creative, if you're trying to do things rapidly, if you're trying to scale stuff, what I'd like to talk about next is platform. On the platform side, marketing and growth are majority technical these days. If you do not have technologists working on your growth platform, you will not succeed. So get out there and make sure that you're doing that. What you are trying to do, though, in a platform sense, is integrate tools. And integrating tools are things like ad platforms. So Google's API is a great tool. There are testing frameworks like Lean Plumber, Optimizely. If you're trying to do automation, again, ad APIs from Facebook, Google, Criteo, others are great. Braze is great for lifecycle management. Singular for spend management. There's all kinds of tools out there that take away all the tasks you have to do manually and automate it. Use these tools. Most tasks should be done by services and tools, not manually by your people. If you're testing, sure, you can start off that way because you're just running a test. You don't want to invest in a tool just for a test. But once you find it works, scale it with a tool. Try to automate everything that you can. Last then is people. So to lead a growth effort, you probably want a technical marketer or a product manager, someone who really understands technology, understands the customer, and can pull it all together. It's no different than a product team in a lot of sense. On our marketing organization, or in our marketing organization at GetYourGuide, we run things like mission teams. We have a technical marketer who runs things. We have product managers in marketing. Even our brand team sits within the mission teams. Why? Because it allows us to really focus on driving towards very fast iteration cycles and scaling stuff up that works. You want to have engineering and BI attached and dedicated to this group. If it's kind of someone part-time hopping in, hopping out, it's not going to work. You need data science and analytics. You need design. And ultimately, you need to empower the team with unambiguous targets. So all those KPIs we talked about earlier, you want to make sure the team has targets against those KPIs, because then they can run autonomously, they can run faster. So 2 takeaways, really clear: growth teams are tech teams. Just keep that in mind. And the second is, more autonomy, faster speed. And again, you achieve autonomy not by saying, hey, go do whatever you want. You achieve autonomy with clear targets. So you have to know your growth model. You have to know your KPI. You have to have targets around those. And then that team can run very aggressively towards them. So again, growth framework. Know your growth model. Understand your customer, people, process, platform. Your results may vary. Just keep that in mind. And thank you. Anything I can answer?
Hi. So you mentioned mission teams. That sounded very interesting. So how are you using or implementing these mission teams? Are they fixed? Are they collected around a particular challenge mission, or how is this set up?
Yeah, so at GetYourGuide, we set up mission teams predominantly around a channel. Although there's some exceptions around that. Sorry, I should caveat this: within marketing, we set it up around a channel. So for example, we have a paid search mission team. There is a lead of paid search. There are a bunch of what we call growth marketers who work on paid search. And then there's a product manager who works with the automation platform. The engineers are dedicated, and we have a data scientist or 2 now dedicated, an analyst dedicated, and we have a creative person dedicated. Obviously, if you're starting up, you might not be able to do that for one channel. You might have to do it across a couple channels, or there might have to be people who move between channels. The key thing is to understand that in a channel, almost every channel has the components of a growth marketer, has the components of an engineering team, has the components of data science, has the components of creative. And you need to assign that whole team the goal of growth or performance in that area. So everyone feels responsible for it at the end of the day. It's not like the engineers are responsible just for, I don't know, uptime, but not actually for how you drive growth, or the creative's just responsible for, brand cohesion, but not actually growth. You need to make sure everyone on that team is aligned with it. So it's the same like within a product mission team. A product mission team is a product manager with hopefully dedicated engineers, maybe a dedicated researcher, dedicated designer, potentially dedicated analyst. But again, as you start off small, just try to dedicate some people towards growth, period. Have a technical marketer or a product manager and those resources, and then as you scale up, you can create new teams that look like that. Thank you all very much.